Afternoon. I would like to welcome everyone to the City of Santa Barbara's Planning Commission meeting for June 11th, 2009. And we'd like to begin with our roll call. So, Ms. Feliciano, would you please call the roll?
Vice Chair Thompson. Here. Commissioner Bartlett.
Here.
Commissioner Jacobs will be late. Commissioner Lodge.
Here.
Commissioner White.
Here.
And Chair Larson.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We need to be out by 5 o'clock today, so we'll be conducting our meeting very briskly, we hope. At this time, are there any requests for continuances, withdrawals, appeals, etc.?
There are not.
Thank you very much. Any announcements?
No.
Okay. And public comment. Anyone from the public may comment for up to 2 minutes on anything not on the agenda today. So we'll open public comment. Seeing no one coming forward, I will close public comment. And we'll be ready to move to our first item, the application of Patsy Stadelman, Brownstein Hyatt, Farber Schreck, agent for Andrew M. Siebel. That would be 415 Allen Road. Mr. Cotto.
Kathy Kennedy will be giving the staff presentation.
Thank you very much. Ms. Kennedy.
Good afternoon. The project is located at 415 Allen Road. And the intent of the proposed project is to subdivide 415 Allen Road, which consists of 1.37 acres, into 2 parcels in order to create a new lot for a single-family residence. Here's the site location. It's located just north of Cliff Drive, west of Las Positas, right along Allen Road, as shown here. Here's an aerial view of the property as well. I'd like to point out the existing home on the southern portion. The northern portion is vacant, and this is where the lot split would occur, about halfway across the property. The existing site information involves the parcel having an A1 zone. The minimum lot area required with slope density provisions is 1.5 acres, and the site is currently 1.37 acres. Therefore, it's non-conforming to zoning. In regard to general plan designation, it is residential 1 unit per acre, and since the site is over 1 acre, it does conform to the general plan designation. In order to approve a subdivision, the Planning Commission must make the findings that the project is consistent with the city's zoning ordinance and the general plan. A simple subdivision of the parcel would not be consistent with the zoning ordinance and the general plan, because the existing parcel is currently non-conforming, as I said, to the A1 zone, and proposed parcel A, which would be the larger of the two if the lot split were to go forward, it would become more non-conforming to the lot area. Also, proposed parcel B would be too small. It would be 0.29 acres, too small to meet the lot area requirements for the A1 zone, which the requirement is 1.5 acres, and too small to meet the general plan density of 1 unit per acre. Therefore, the applicant has requested the following. The initiation requests are before you today for parcel B. It would be a general plan amendment to change proposed parcel B area from residential 1 unit per acre to residential 5 units per acre, and a zone change from the A1 zone to E3 zone, and then the associated local coastal plan amendment to accept the zone change. In regard to the general plan amendment, the designation for the entire neighborhood is residential 1 unit per acre. The proposal would change the proposed parcel B from 1 unit per acre to 5 units per acre, so that the new lot, which would have a size of 12,709 square feet, would then conform to the general plan. Here's an exhibit showing that. In the green is the existing 1 dwelling unit per acre. If the initiation were to go forward and the project go forward, this proposed parcel B would be changed from 1 unit per acre to 5 units per acre, as shown. In regard to zoning, the parcel is zoned A1, which requires a minimum lot area of 1 acre, or more if there's a slope is involved in it, if it's over 10%. Proposed parcel B would be rezoned to E3, which allows smaller size parcels so that the new parcel would conform to the zoning. The zoning in this area is mostly A1, except for the Braemar Tract, which is located to the north of the project site. Proposed parcel B, if rezoned to E3, would extend the E3 zone boundary to the south. And here on this exhibit, you can see the E3 zoning to the north. This area to the south, below that is all A1. This certain portion here, proposed parcel B, would be rezoned from A1 to E3. Here's another view showing you the existing zoning. You can see how the majority of this area is A1. The Braemar Tract is located right here to the north, and this is an E3 zoning district. Staff is not recommending approval of the initiation. We have some concerns. In regard to zoning, the existing parcel is already non-conforming to lot area because it is 1.37 acres and not the 1.5 acres required. Reducing the size of the lot, which would be proposed parcel A, would make it more non-conforming. And the high density of the Braemar Tract to the north has been considered and identified as an improper subdivision. Creating an additional parcel that would be similar to this adjacent development would not be good sound planning. Staff also has concerns about the general plan amendment proposal, changing the general plan to 5 units per acre for only one parcel, while all of the surrounding parcel would remain 1 unit per acre is not also good planning practice. The city's land use element states that this neighborhood already is too dense, and the creation of a new lot would be in conflict with this. Here's an aerial of a larger area. The parcel is located right here. Just want to demonstrate the Braemar Tract and the density in this area. There's a possible option. Staff said that we would consider supporting the proposal to create the new lot on parcel B if the new lot were to have an upper middle income restriction placed on it. The basis for this is that increased densities can be allowed if affordable housing is provided. And the proposal would be subject to the city's density bonus program. In speaking with the applicant, they've stated that the affordability condition on the project would not be economically feasible, but have suggested a payment of an in lieu fee instead to go towards affordable housing in the city, although staff is not in support of this option. As a result, staff's recommendation is that the Planning Commission deny the initiation of the zone change, the general plan amendment, and the local coastal program amendment based on the concerns discussed in this report. That concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you very much. Now we'll hear from the applicant, please. And bear in mind, please, that we have to leave the room by 5 o'clock, and there are others. So limit your presentation, please, to about 15 minutes.
5 o'clock.
About 15 minutes. It's 4:45. Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the Commission, I'm Steve Americana from the Brownstein Law Firm. I'm here representing the Seabolds who own the property in question. And I'd like to address a number of the issues in the staff report and in the staff presentation, and also a few other issues as well. This is one of those opportunities for you to engage in some planning and not just issuing permits or discretionary approvals, but actually engage in some planning for a neighborhood and to look at some of the broader issues.
Have you got the mic on there?
My apologies.
That's
You're
not-
now on.
I'm now on.
Yes.
But I've been so articulate up till now. I don't know.
You get 3 extra minutes.
I do? Wow. Okay. So just so that the record is clear, I'm Steve Americana from the Brownstein Law Firm representing the applicant, Mr. and Mrs. Seabold, in this matter. They've lived in this property for a number of years, and as I was saying, this is an opportunity for the Commission to engage in some planning for a neighborhood and to start to look ahead to the future needs of this community. As you could see from the graphics that were up on the screen presented by staff. This is an odd-shaped lot, and it is a lot created by a long history. One of the things that you've undoubtedly noticed is that the Braemar Tract, which is immediately north of this lot, has relatively small lots, but 1 acre land use designation on the general plan. There has never been, as far as I know, an effort to actually bring the general plan into conformity with the existing development pattern and the zoning. There seems to be some sort of a gap between the existing development pattern and the zoning. What we're seeking to do is to reflect the existing development pattern. This particular parcel with its odd shape is in the transitional zone between the E3 area and the A1 area. This parcel is larger than required for the A1, which I'll describe in a minute. But it's in the transitional zone. And we think, given the shape of the lot and the fact that the existing house is on the southern portion of the lot, it provides one of those opportunities to engage in a smart, small infill project. The community's housing needs are well known to all of you. The Plan Santa Barbara process reflects those needs. And one of the ways in which those needs can be addressed by the community is to look for smart, small infill opportunities. We think this is one of those opportunities, and with the community's housing needs in mind and some willingness to look at the existing rules and policies, we think that the Commission stands in a good position to begin to address, on a small site-by-site basis, some of those housing needs. It also provides an opportunity to do it without changing the essential character of the neighborhood. This is an entirely built-out neighborhood, with the exception of just a few lots. This neighborhood the development pattern is already set. There are, I would guess, other neighborhoods in the city like this, where there are isolated pockets where there might be a development opportunity or two. There might be a housing opportunity or two. This, we think, is one of those opportunities. If you look at the policies that are expressed in the document that this Commission approved in connection with the Plan Santa Barbara process, the policy preference report issued in January, we think that the idea of allowing for a smart, small infill project on a site like this makes a good deal of sense. There's a paragraph, for example, that talks about living within our resources. And if I could just quote that to you, and my guess is that you've seen it often enough, you've probably memorized it yourselves. It says, living within our resources means effectively managing growth and infill development to conserve the community's natural, physical, and historic resources for present and future generations. Challenges between future development and resource use must be met with creative solutions that meet the multiple objectives of preserving historic resources and community character, retaining a diverse population and culture, and allowing sufficient growth to propel a steady economy. And what I focused on that, or what I keyed in on in that paragraph, is the notion of preserving the community character. We think that allowing an additional house on the corner of this parcel would, in fact, preserve the community character and still allow for the creation of another residential unit. There's a specific housing policy that is reflected in the policy preference report, which I also would like to read to you. It talks about incentives for affordable by design units. It reads as follows: prepare design standards and codify incentives for market rate developers to build smaller, affordable by design residential units that better meet the needs of our community. Incentives could include higher allowable densities, less required parking, etc. Now, we think that the trend of the policy preference report and the thinking that's going on both in this Commission and with the City Council and the other planning bodies of the city is to look for these opportunities and try and be creative, try and be flexible with respect to our planning policies. The picture that we have up on the screen shows the property. It's an aerial photograph. Offset shows the house at the bottom of the screen. And the next picture is going to show you what it would look like with the house in place. And we produced this photo sim so that you could see how well an additional house would fit into the neighborhood and how consistent it is with the neighborhood character. All of the parcels that are to the north up at the top of the screen are all part of the Braemar tract. They are all significantly less than 1 acre. They're typically about 1/4 of an acre. In fact, I think we've got another graphic that's going to show you what that looks like. So this shows you the parcel that we want to create, and it shows you the adjacent parcels as well. The parcel we want to create is 12,709 square feet, and just working your way around from the left side of the screen, you can see the parcels that are closest to it: 10,400, 9,500, working your way around 9,100. Then crossing over Allen Road, there are 2 parcels that are in the same range: 10,400, 10,400. And then the bottom 4 parcels are all larger. But the interesting thing about those parcels is that they all have the creek. They all have Arroyo Burro Creek running through the backyard, which makes the developable area of all of those parcels considerably smaller. So excluding the creek, and I think that's calculated from the top of Bank, Patsy, if I'm not mistaken?
The flood control easement.
From the flood control easement. You can see the numbers. They're 10,000, 9,000, 10,000, 6,000. And so as a practical matter, those parcels are, in terms of their buildable area, about the same size as the parcel that we're talking about. So you can see that we think that the parcel that we want to create fits in very nicely to the development pattern of the neighborhood, both in terms of the property that would be developed and in terms of the size of the house that we would put up there. A word about the staff recommendation. The staff report suggests that the staff would be prepared to support our project if we made this unit affordable under the city's affordable housing guidelines. The problem is, and you've encountered this before in your discussion about the inclusionary housing ordinance, is that when you have a very small project, it becomes infeasible to do that, because the city's maximum sales price for a unit will not cover the cost of construction. And so no one would ever build one. And that's why the city came up with the policy of allowing small developers to pay an in lieu fee instead of having to actually provide the unit. It's the only way that, in fact, any kind of financial benefit to the affordable housing program would be created by these small projects, which is why the city adopted that policy. We're prepared to pay that affordable housing fee in the same way that we would if we were subject to the inclusionary housing ordinance. I should point out that since it's a 1-unit project, it's not subject to the inclusionary housing ordinance, which has been is now applicable to 2-unit projects and above. We're exempt, but we're prepared to pay as if we were subject to it in order to pay our fair share of that need. But if the condition suggested by staff is imposed, obviously the project is simply infeasible, because the construction costs could not be recovered from the sales price. The last point I would make has to do with what I'm calling a change in approach. For many years, the question that has been asked of projects like this, small housing projects, is why should we approve it? Give us all the good reasons why we should approve it. And I'm going to suggest something a little dramatic to you, and that is when it comes to building moderate cost, moderate-sized housing in this community, given our housing need, I would suggest that the question should be, why shouldn't we approve it? What are the reasons for saying no? Now, that requires a real change in our mindset. It requires us to conclude, to believe going in, the presumption should be that we need the housing and the housing should be approved unless there is a compelling reason to say no. And if you apply that test to this particular project, I would suggest that there isn't a compelling reason to say no. We're asking for a change in the general plan and the zoning, and we think that that is absolutely appropriate. We think that the fact that the existing general plan designation for the Braemar tract is 1 dwelling unit per acre is an anomaly. It doesn't reflect development patterns, and it shouldn't be a reason for saying no, because it doesn't reflect reality in that neighborhood. Let me offer a word about the slope density ordinance, and I've been in a discussion with your city attorney about this subject. The suggestion appears in the staff report that the slope density ordinance requires our parcel to be 1.5 acres. It's 1.37 acres, and therefore it's an existing nonconforming parcel. From the way I read the slope density ordinance, I don't agree with that conclusion. I believe that the parcel conforms to both the zoning code and the general plan, both of which are 1 acre minimum, and our parcel is 1.37 acres. If you read the language of the slope density ordinance, what it actually says is that you cannot build a house on a vacant parcel created after the slope density ordinance was put into the municipal code unless your parcel meets the minimum lot size standard of the slope density ordinance. Our parcel does not fall into that category. Our parcel is already developed, and therefore slope density does not apply to it at all. The slope density is a control for building houses. It's not a control for the development of parcels, or even taking an existing parcel and making it smaller. That's how we read the zoning code. And as I say, I've been in conversation with your city attorney about it and haven't had a chance to find out whether or not he thinks I'm all wet or actually have a point here. But I want to offer it up to you as well, because I think it matters in terms of your analysis of this particular project. So those are all the points I wanted to make. I think Mr. Siebold also would like to address you.
Thank you,
And
Mr. Americaner.
I appreciate your attention.
Thank you. Sir, would you introduce yourself with your full name?
I'm Andy Siebold. I'm the owner of 415 Allen Road.
Thank you.
We bought the house in 1999. There's a couple other things I would like to mention that Steve didn't, is even after the lot split, if the slope density does not apply, our lot is still over 1 acre, so it's still conforming. And I think that's an important point. Even after you take off that piece, it will still be over 1 acre. The other thing I would like to say is that this neighborhood behind us, the Braemar Track, is not. It's been given a bad name by the city because it's bad planning and it's a lot of slope building and everything else. But it's done and it's finished. We're not there. We're right on this side of the Braemar Track. The house across the street is not part of the Braemar Track. The house directly north is the 9148 square feet, but the houses on this side were not built at the same time as the Braemar Track, and they were not built to the same standards. The other thing, of course, is that all of those lots across from us have an A1 rating, and you can see that they're far from being conforming. So I'm asking you to let us have the zoning change. We plan to put, what I intend to do if I get permission is to put a solar-powered house that is as green as can be put together, smart home, fully automated, and it would be a showpiece for the city, and I would appreciate the opportunity to build it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anything else? All right, thank you very much. With that, I'll open public comment. I have a speaker slip, and we've received quite a bit of mail regarding this, and the mail will be the people who contributed public correspondence to this that will be listed in the minutes. And I have a sheet from Gil Berry. Please come forward. Mr. Berry, up to 2 minutes.
Hello, Planning Commissioners. May I have 3?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Introduce yourself, please.
Dr. Rogers, who's a very close neighbor to this project, had appointments with patients and asked me as a friend and neighbor if I would come and represent him. First of all, Stephen Fawcett says that a lot split is a 2-unit project. The first unit is exempt and 1 unit has to pay the fee. Next, this Braemar Tract subdivision was developed in the county with improper zoning and too high of a density for the slopes, and the city would never have approved it with that kind of density. Next, the history is very important. Originally, there were like 5.5 acres that a developer bought, and he wanted to develop it into like 5 lots in the city of Santa Barbara. The city said no, that they'd only allow 4. So he split it into 3 1-acre lots, and the other one was like 2.3 acres. And then he came back to the Planning Commission later and split the 2.37 acres into 2 lots, one being the subject property. The Planning Commission was not too thrilled at that way of getting around their previous restriction to 4 lots. So they approved this, I don't remember the years, around 1980. They approved this with a condition of approval that it be not ever split again. This subject lot has a condition of approval when it was created that it shall never be split again. Now I know that you, or the City Council, has a right to do that, but I think you would want to appreciate that if you folks put on a condition of approval for a good reason, that you would probably appreciate if some subsequent Planning Commission would honor your condition of approval. It was put there for a reason. Excuse me, I'm talking too fast because I'm in a hurry. I lived in the neighborhood at the time, and I can recall that it had to do with the slope density ordinance. And this parcel, at the time it was created, needed to have a 1.5 acres under the slope density ordinance, and it only had 1.37. That's probably one of the reasons they said they'd reluctantly approve the lot split to create this lot under the condition it'd be never further split in the future. And 2 last points. Increasing the density in an area far from public services where people can't walk to jobs or walk to services flies directly against the discussion in Plan Santa Barbara where they're talking about increasing density, providing housing opportunities in the areas where people can walk to jobs and work, in the transit corridors. This area is far from any kind of transit corridors, far from jobs, far from services. You can't walk to anything. And lastly, there's a lot of talk in Plan Santa Barbara about granny units being loosened up as providing affordable housing opportunities. And if the general plan goes through with what they've been talking about and loosens up granny units, there's going to be granny units up in this Allen Road area that is already way too dense, and the traffic is going to be horrendous. The last thing we need is to increase density on some of the lots to further exacerbate the traffic. So I think that it should definitely wait a couple of years till Plan Santa Barbara goes through and see whether or not the city does in fact loosen up these second unit requirements. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Berry. Anyone else for public comment? All right, I'll close public comment for this item. And we'll have questions from the Planning Commission. And that would be Ms. Lodge, followed by Mr. White.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was going to, before Mr. Americana raised the issue, I was going to ask staff about the slope density ordinance and its being non-conforming, even being over an acre. And this would be a question, Mr. Vincent. Be prepared to ask. I understand he doesn't agree with Mr. Americana.
Madam Chair, members of the Commission, in fact, I agree with him. The slope density ordinance, as it relates to lot area, concerns the erection of buildings. It doesn't speak to that a lot cannot be created. I've just asked staff right now how this house that exists there came to be. I've asked them if there was a lot area modification. But where I don't agree with Mr. Americana is that necessarily that is a reason to approve this general plan amendment, zone amendment, to create a lot that would not be able to have a house on it. That, in other words, the applicant is asking you to take an A1 lot. It exists in its condition as it is. Whether there was a lot area modification or other means, it exists and a house exists. That won't be taken away. But is that a reason to make it smaller? To subdivide a portion of it away? When that would not be consistent. You're creating a new lot. You're creating a new configuration of that A1 lot by going forward with this application. And that if it was a vacant lot, it could not be built on. It could not have a home built on it. So while he points accurately to language in the slope density ordinance that recognizes that when the slope density ordinance was adopted, that lots existed and there are considerations, there were provisions within the slope density ordinance that allow for what would become existing non-conforming lots, lots that would not have enough size to be a buildable lot. There were provisions within the slope density ordinance that said, well, grandfather those lots. Those lots, if they existed prior to, created in their condition prior to the adoption of the slope density ordinance, they may still be a buildable lot. The way the slope density ordinance works today is if this lot was, if the 415 Allen Road lot were vacant and this application was proposed, 415 could not have a home on it because it would be A1 and less than 1.5 acres because of its slope. So he accurately points to there's a distinction in the way the slope density ordinance is written. It speaks to, when it speaks to a lot, what a new lot has to have. It talks about frontage and depth. And as I understand the application, those provisions would be satisfied with the application. What it speaks to as far as the amount of lot area, it speaks to newly erected houses. So he's correct in pointing that out. Where I diverge in opinion is that I don't know if it's necessarily enough to get you there to support this.
Madam Chair, I need to say something too because I don't completely agree with Mr.
Cotto.
Vincent on this. I think it depends more on the timing of the subdivision and the house, and unfortunately we don't have that for this. But if it's as Mr. Barry said, and the subdivision happened, and it created a 1.37 acre lot for some reason, and that was subject to the slope density ordinance, and then they built a house on it, suddenly it's okay to re-subdivide it? You know, that just doesn't make any sense to me. You know what I mean? You create it, let's say we created a lot that was 1.5 acres. It was subject to the slope density ordinance back in 1980. And then, but it's vacant. So you can't build a house on it unless it's 1.5 acres, right? And now that there's a house on it, it's okay. It doesn't apply anymore. The slope density ordinance doesn't apply once a house is on it. That doesn't make any sense. It's there for a reason, and it shouldn't, because of the way this language is written, to allow it just to not apply once a house is built. It just doesn't make any sense to me at all.
Thank you very much.
Madam Chair, I had one more question.
Ms. Lodge.
Thank you. As I understand it, the city inherited the zoning when this property was annexed to the city. Is that correct? The E3, is that portion?
Commissioner Lodge, we inherited the property as it was annexed, and then we gave it the E3 zoning district.
The city did.
For the Braemar Tract area that we're talking about.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought that was the zoning that the county had applied, and then it was annexed.
Well, they have different zoning designations and districts. And we gave it the E3 when it became part of the city.
Was it a similar?
It was already developed.
Was it a similar density? And that the city's E3 was what best lined up with the
Best
county's?
fit what was there, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. White?
Sure.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Danny, there's are ways that a conditional use permit can allow a second residence to be built on a piece of property. Can you describe whether that would be applicable to a lot such as this?
Yes, there's a conditional, it's actually now a performance standard permit that's granted by the staff hearing officer. But basically, it says that if you have enough lot area, including slope density, to support 2 lots that you meet zoning, not general plan, but zoning, then you can apply for, and the planning commission could approve a conditional use permit to allow multiple units. For example, if this lot was 5 acres big and they wanted to, and it was flat, and they wanted to put 5 units on it with a conditional use permit, that would be allowable. In this case, they would need 2 acres. I mean, even if it was flat, they would need 2 acres to put 2 houses on it with that CUP.
Thank you.
Any other question, Mr. White? Is that it? Okay. Mr. Bartlett?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I think a lot of the questions here seem to stem from what happened in history, and we don't really have that in our packets. I mean, were there conditions of approval with the most recent lot split that it couldn't be further split again, and why don't we have that if it does exist? And then what is sort of the trail, the dates of when the original 4-lot subdivision was created, did that truly indeed predate the slope density ordinance? And then when it was split into 5 lots, where did that fall in the history timeline? I mean, we're missing the key points to be able to connect the dots, so we need somebody to help fill this in.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Vincent.
I would like to speak to the question of the prior condition of approval of no further subdivisions. The Subdivision Map Act specifies that that local governments, whether cities or counties, who are the local agencies that regulate subdivisions, may not put such conditions on a subdivision. If an applicant can come back and show that another application for the further subdivision of a parcel is consistent with the general plan and the zoning, they're entitled to do so. So I understand that there's, that has been a practice, and many of these commissioners today have heard me say this before, that those conditions are unenforceable under the Subdivision Map Act.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vincent.
And then what about the dates or the sequencing of the original 4-lot subdivision and then the 5th lot?
For Madam Chair, Commissioner Bartlett, staff didn't realize that would be important. We looked at what was there now and what they're proposing, and felt our recommendation, based on what we provided you today, would be adequate. It didn't seem to be necessary from our standpoint.
Thank you, Mr. Bartlett. Mr. Thompson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've got 2 questions. One, Mr. Cato, could you give us the status of the ordinance change for the in lieu fee and the inclusionary housing that this commission recommended that we not institute, but the City Council chose to institute it? Is that in effect now?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Thompson, yes, that is in effect.
Okay, so this would be a 2-unit subdivision, which would allow the inclusionary housing ordinance in lieu fee to apply then?
Correct. That fee is $18,000.
Right. Okay. My other question is, are there any other options for the applicant besides a performance standard for putting a secondary dwelling unit on his existing lot without a subdivision?
Madam Chair, members of the Commission, the performance standard permit concerns additional units. Right. Secondary dwelling units by state law are actually a ministerial action. The city does have several restrictions and limitations on when secondary units may be placed on the lot, but by state law that has to be a ministerial action. So it doesn't require the conditional use permit anymore. On this lot, I would assume a secondary with the amount of size, but I don't have all of the restrictions off the top of my head. The one thing about secondary dwelling units is that their use is relatively limited.
Mr. White.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I believe that the city, one of the ingredients in the city, that one is that it can only be rented at ultra low giveaway or family use, and secondly, as I recall, it must be attached. And when it comes time for comments, I'll have a couple on that. But that's what would not allow a secondary residence to be located where they're proposing, for example, a single-family residence at this point.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? All right. Comments, please? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, Mr. Cotto, I'm sorry.
I would like to make a comment, please. And that is the applicants have said, hey, this isn't part of the Braemar Tract. So as if that's a justification. Our position is the Braemar Tract was a big mistake. Land use element basically says that. It's a big mistake. Shouldn't have done it. And our position is, why would we make it worse? Why would we make that area that's already found to be bad planning to be even bigger? It's just, I mean, to us, it's a no-brainer. We strongly recommend that you deny this initiation.
Thank you very much. So comments by commissioners. Commissioner Lodge, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Cotto just took the words out of my mouth. I don't see why we would extend or enlarge what was a mistake. And so I can't support the request, and I would support the staff recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. White?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with Ms. Lodge about not moving forward with the initiation. I wanted to make a couple of comments, though, which might sort of touch off of Mr. Berry's comments as well, and that is, one of the things that strikes me, and it shows up on the map, is that the house on this property is relatively small compared to the size of the lot. It's not, I imagine the floor area ratio on this particular project is relatively low. We didn't get square footage figures, but just looking at the aerial, it would suggest that it's a relatively low FAR. And in the comments that I've made about granny flats, secondary residences, I agree with Mr. Berry that overloading a site is inappropriate, but where there is a low floor area ratio, I see an opportunity for market rate secondary residences. I don't agree with the city's policy of having them be ultra low affordable. I think it just makes them undevelopable. We have to get to a place where the market is encouraging them. Otherwise, of course, as history has shown, they don't happen. But I would suggest that this may be an opportunity at some point. Again, we're a very long way, I'm afraid, for this owner to get there, but that this would be the kind of possible candidate where there's a low floor area ratio on the site. We have apparently a couple. I mean, it's not a large family and a large house on this lot. There's plenty of room for another small residence, and that this could be, if this were in the county, this would be an opportunity for a secondary residence that could supply some of what Mr. Americana was talking about housing. I don't like the idea that it's not this would be a not transit-based residence, and that's a detraction. Where I'm hoping we see more of these special uses is where there's transit is supplying the residences. So, in short, I support staff's position on the. I agree with staff's position in not supporting the initiations on this.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bartlett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, on this one, the land use decisions, for me, I find myself really agreeing with Mr. Americana. Why wouldn't we want to do this? The proposed lot and proposed house are nearly identical with what's directly across the street. I'm not comparing it to the Braemar tract. I'm talking about what's currently in the A1 zone. In fact, it has more usable lot area than any of those lots. And it precludes us from having to build a house in virgin farmland somewhere else. We've already got the infrastructure. We've got the utilities. It looks like a donut hole in the middle of the residential neighborhood now. I think it's going to make the neighborhood look more conforming. I think this is the perfect opportunity to add one more residence without impacting the character of a neighborhood. And the new lot would be conforming to slope density. It only needs, I think, 11,000 something square feet at 1.5 times the 7,500 square foot minimum if we do the general plan amendment and fix the zoning. What we really should be asking ourselves is why wouldn't we want to clean up the general plan designation to recognize what has happened? If we didn't like the Braemar tract, why did we even annex it to the city? Obviously, we've accepted it, so by our actions, I think we have already spoken. If we didn't want it, we wouldn't have taken it. So now I think we should make the general plan follow our development pattern. It's ironic to have it in conflict. Anybody that wants to do anything in that area now has to deal with the zoning and the general plan being in conflict, and that's what most of our meetings here in the last few months have been all about, is dealing with parcel by parcel issues with general plan and zoning not being in alignment. So in this case, I think that the proposal is very believable, and the fact that the applicant is willing to even pay in lieu fees when it's not required for creating one lot, I think speaks huge to me. Not only are they willing to provide in lieu fees to go toward other affordable housing, they're also wanting to do a demonstration green residence, which is what Plan Santa Barbara is all about. So to me, it's following all the principles of Plan Santa Barbara. So either we have to settle for broken dreams or broken rules, and I would rather fix the rules than break our dreams. So that's where I am on this one.
Thank you very much. Mr. Thompson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with a lot of the points that Commissioner Bartlett just said. If you look at the situation here, the property would create an additional housing dwelling unit that's consistent with the neighborhood as it exists. It would make use of an existing parcel that is virtually useless to the property owner the way it's configured. And we talked about transit-oriented. Actually, there is transit within walking distance of this property. MTD has a line that's less than a block away. So I'd like to find a way to make it happen. I do see, though, that under the existing rules, we can't find a way to make it happen unless we make some extraordinary efforts. I wouldn't like to see the general plan change to have a single lot be a different general plan, but that means so the whole area that's designated for one dwelling unit, an acre that isn't following that ought to be changed, and this applicant shouldn't have to do the whole thing. I think that the in lieu fee option should be explored. It certainly is something that the city has pushed, and I don't think we were thinking about this kind of a situation, but it seems to me that it complies with that. So I'd like to see that we figure some way to make it happen. I'd also, this is a question, I keep hearing that the Braemar track is such a bad example, but maybe you all could explain to me what about it is such a bad example. People that live there seem to like it, and as Commissioner Bartlett said, obviously the city thought enough of it that we were willing to annex it.
Any response from staff?
Madam Chair, I was hoping to read the actual land use element statement. I don't think we have it here, though. But basically, to summarize, the land use element says that the reason that the Braemar tract is a bad example is basically small lots, flat land development, essentially development pattern on steep slopes. Let's see if I can find it here.
Well, while you're looking that up, this particular parcel isn't really such a steep slope. And it's larger than most of the other parcels that are objectionable. So while the Braemar tract itself may find a problem in that regard, I don't see that this particular parcel has that same problem. It's not flat, but it's not very sloped either.
We're taking a moment for...
Chair Lawson, just in regard to the slopes, you'll see in the staff report the proposed parcel B is almost 20% slope. The existing is over 15.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I found
Yes,
it.
Mr. Cotto.
Okay, this was in the Campanile neighborhood discussion. It's not long. The Campanile area is bordered on the north by Aurora Creek, on the south by the ocean, on the east by city limits, and on the west by Hope Ranch. Most of this area is in large parcels which are either vacant or contain single-family dwellings. The exception to this is the Braemar tract, a single-family small lot development on steep topography which presents a vivid picture of improper subdivision techniques. Some areas of undeveloped land with steep topography still exist within the city on which this poor type of development is possible. In order to prevent a reoccurrence of this type of development, the city has, over the past several years, rezoned many such areas to lower density zones. Also, protective measures such as environmental impact review, grading review, and the open space elements have been adopted. It goes on a little bit, but that's what it has to say about the Braemar Tract.
Thank you.
Well, I would say that we need to address this incompatibility between the zoning and the general plan and the general plan update that's ongoing. Unfortunately, the way things are right now, I don't think we could legitimately make findings to change the general plan land use designation for one single parcel in the middle of an area that has a different general plan that's kind of smacks of spot zoning. But I would like to find a way that we could make this happen, because from a logic and reality standpoint, it makes sense.
Any other comments? Anybody prepared with a motion? Oh, my comment. My comment is, at this time, I need to support the staff position, because, like as Commissioner Thompson says, we don't have the way to do it yet. So at this time, I am supporting staff. So with that, we're looking for a motion. Oh, Mr. Thompson.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to ask if we continue this and send it back to staff to see if there were other ways to move it forward. Do you think we'd have any potential options, or does it require being denied and then start over?
Madam Chair, members of the Commission, the proposal doesn't violate the zoning as it is proposed with the way the slope density ordinance is written regarding erecting buildings. It doesn't violate the zoning ordinance. But in order for the whole application to work, this commission has to not only make the general plan amendment, but also make a zone change of a portion of an A1 lot. So those things have to sequentially occur before you can even get to the opportunity to make the subdivision. And actually, I believe Mr. Cotto and I were more in agreement than he believes, that my point was that yes, you could technically, once you make the general plan amendment, once you make the zone amendment of the portion of the lot, and then subdivide it, because of the way that the slope density ordinance is written, that A1 lot, the remnant of 415 Allen Road, could continue. It would exist. My point is, I think the same point that Mr. Cotto made is, why do something because there's a house there already, when if this was vacant land, your zoning and would tell you not to do that? Just because there's a house there, now the zoning is telling you to do it? I don't think it's telling you to do it, but it's not telling you can't do it. That was my point. So if a majority of this commission wishes to have us look at that and advise this commission further about how it could happen, then yes, I would recommend a continuance.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I'm looking for a motion. Ms. Lodge?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, for the reasons presented in the staff report, I move that the Planning Commission deny the initiation of a zone change, general plan amendment, and local coastal program amendment for the proposed project.
Second.
Thank you very much. I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
No.
No.
Okay. So motion carries. And this is appealable within 10 days to City Council. Thank you. We'll be on for our next item now. And that is the application of Cornell Androlitis for Richard Saunders for 203 Chapala Street. And our staff presentations, Mr. Gillette.
Actually, it's pronounced Gullett. Dan Gullett
Oh,
will be
Gullett.
giving
I'm
the
sorry.
staff presentation.
He's sharp anyway.
And I hope the applicant's on his way. Oh, they're here. Okay, so we'll start, and they'll do their application or presentation after.
Good afternoon, Chair Larson, Commissioners. This project site is approximately 1/2 acre. It's located at 203 Chapala Street in the West Beach neighborhood. It's adjacent to Mission Creek and across from the railroad depot, and has 3 street frontages on Chapala Street, Yananali Street, and Los Aguajes Avenue. This is an aerial photo of the vicinity and a perspective photo of the vicinity. The proposed project includes a partial demolition of a commercial building and an addition for a total of 13,468 square feet. It involves a change of use from commercial to 100% residential with 7 new condominiums. Also included are 16 parking spaces and public improvements. This is the existing condition on the site. The shaded walls on this portion of the building are the portion of the building considered to be architecturally significant and character defining, and these walls would remain as part of the project. This is the site plan and first floor plan. On the northeast corner of the property is the Mission Creek Channel, and this is the development limitation area for Mission Creek. The access to the development would be continue to be provided on Los Aguajes Avenue, but the curb cut would be moved closer to the adjacent property. With this project, there would be 4 3-bedroom units and 2 2-bedroom units. The 3-bedroom units would range in size from 1,729 square feet to 2,140 square feet, and the 2-bedroom units would range from 1,569 square feet to 1,602 square feet. This shows the second-story portions of the project, the third story, and the roof plan. This shows the existing street frontage on Chapala Street. And this is the proposed elevation on Chapala Street. In addition to preserving the first floor portion, the project includes reconstruction of a character-defining clock tower that was removed by a previous owner in 2004. These are photo simulations provided by the applicant from the railroad depot and photos of the story poles. This is the Yananali Street frontage. And at the top is the proposed Yananali Street elevation. You can see the tower on the right side. On the bottom is the rear elevation that would face the adjacent apartment building. This is the existing Los Aguajes frontage and the proposed elevation on Los Aguajes. This is the photo simulation and story poles. The project also includes a tree protection plan that would protect in place the mature vegetation, with exception of 2 Canary Island date palms, which would be relocated toward the southwest corner of the property. The required approvals for the project include 2 front setback modifications, a rear setback modification, coastal development permit, and tentative subdivision map. So the first front setback modification is on Yananali Street. This is the portion of the existing building that would lose its nonconforming status due to the change of use. Staff is supporting this modification due to the historic nature of the building and the proposed use being in conformance to the zoning. The second modification is for the accessible aisle off of Los Aguajes. This encroaches into the required 10-foot setback. Staff is supporting this modification due to the constraints on the lot and its conformance with the purpose and intent of the front setback to provide unimpeded area from ground to sky. The second story of the building encroaches into the 10-foot second story rear setback. The area of this encroachment is approximately 150 square feet. On the adjacent property is the parking lot for the apartment building. Staff is supporting this due to the adjacency of that parking lot and due to the other constraints on this lot. Public improvements with this project include reconfigured curb and sidewalk, access ramps at Chapala and Yananali streets, 2 additional street lights, undergrounding of overhead utilities, and with this project, 2 utility poles would be removed. As part of the application submittal, historic structures report, addendum, phase 1 archaeological resources report, biological report, hydrology soils report, arborist report, and noise study. The environmental analyst determined that this project qualifies for a CEQA exemption under guideline section 15332. In conclusion, staff recommends that your commission approve this project, making the findings in staff report section 8 subject to condition in Exhibit A, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Gullett. And let's hear from the applicant, please. We're just taking a moment to set up. I'll take this opportunity to tell anyone here for public comment to please fill out a green slip and give it to Mr. Cato at the desk. And also, if you're here for the following item, which would be the Montecito Country Club item, this is a good time for you to get a green slip and fill it out so that you're prepared to speak when the time comes as well. I understand. You can't help it. Okay, are we live now? How are we doing? Not good. Not good. All right. Ms. Lodge.
Madam Chair, thank you. Maybe a suggestion for staff and for applicants. If applicants brought all their computer-generated PowerPoints, photographs, whatever, on a flash drive, they could plug it into the city computer, and there wouldn't be any problem then.
Thank you.
That's just a suggestion.
I just see the flash drive. Good. Thank you very much. Commissioner Lodge, for your high-tech input. It's good.
You know, I very much apologize. We've never had this problem before, but naturally I'm having it now. While we're trying to get this set up, I think Dan did a very good job on this. My name is Brian Cornell. Rick Sanders is the property owner. He's here. The one, I think, major point I wanted to make, besides the fact that we've been working hard to make this a beautiful project and tried to really design it in the spirit of that whole East Beach area, the mods are a little bit misleading because I know we're always afraid of mods, and we have 3 on this project. But one is obviously a mod to leave the existing building where it is. The second mod is what I pointed out in the site visit, is a parking space that is in the front yard setback, but the space itself is not. It's really only the accessible offloading area that is in the setback, and I believe that makes a justification. The third mod is something that actually came up late in our review of the project, and if you look at the language of the ordinance, we've always assumed that that was our side yard, and the side yard allows me to build 2 stories within 6 feet. Staff made the determination that that would be our rear yard, and the ordinance requires that a rear yard have a setback of 10 feet for the second floor. But the ordinance clearly seems to give the discretion to staff relative to what yard to choose, what front yard to choose. In our case, we obviously have 3 front yards. What front yard to choose in order to determine what the side yard is. We don't agree that that is a mod because we believe that based on what the ordinance is talking about, oh, you got it up. Rogelio, we're on.
Yeah.
So let's, anyway, I'll show you the language of that ordinance. Are you looking for the presentation?
No, I'm just opening it.
Okay. We need to put this in now. See if we can get this to work. Now I'm going to have to talk really fast. What did we do? What was the problem?
No, it's just a restart.
It was the restart.
There's a refresh or something.
Okay. Here we go. I'm just going to jump right. I'm going to jump right to where I just left off. Zeroing in on our property here. Again, existing building, as Dan has mentioned, is 11,200. So the question is this setback along here? There again is our mod for the parking space within the 10 feet, but the space itself is outside of that, and this is the existing building condition. This is what the ordinance says, and I just want to highlight this part at the bottom. In the event of 2 or more front lot lines, the rear yard area shall be opposite either of the front lot lines. Now, that clearly is the side yard of our neighbor, and always will be the side yard of our neighbor. So it seems like it ought to be the side yard of our property. So mod or not, I just want to make the case here, obviously, that we're not loaded up on mods. I think all of these are very, very minor, and in fact, one is subject to interpretation. The other thing I want to point out, this is the roof plan. The unit sizes, I think, are reasonable. They actually, with the exception of the largest unit, which is really the conversion of the existing building, which was a little bit hard to work with from a space planning standpoint, our average unit size is around 1,700 square feet. So we've tried to keep these compacted, and then that is graphically the portion of the project that is the 3rd floor. So there's very little 3rd story associated with the project. And I just want to also go through these. These are the elevations, of course, that we reviewed with HLC back, what is that, 15 months ago. So it's been that long, but that's how long it takes for us to get a DART application accepted and complete. And there have been some minor revisions in the project from what HLC HLC saw. But they are very minor, and we're anticipating that, obviously, after your review, that we'll go back to them and work out details for a preliminary approval. But just to, these are the actual current elevations that you're approving today. Admittedly, they're computer images, which just, I'm sorry, they're just not as lovely as what we can draw, are they? But these are this, of course, is the Yananali Street elevation. Those are those 3-story portions. This is zooming out and looking at the whole elevation as one. And then that is the one that is before you. So just to give you an idea of what I'm talking about, for instance, if you look at this elevation right here where I'm pointing, we've got a balcony there now instead of what we had. If you look over here at the unit that is closest to Los Aguajes, we actually have a balcony element that's been added there. So those are, I think, detail changes that aren't substantive relative to the evolution of the design. So I'll be happy with that to answer any questions. Again, I apologize for the technical difficulties.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cornell. I will open the public hearing. We've received one letter regarding this from Paula Westbury. Other than that, I have not received any others. All right, with that, I'll close public comment, not seeing anyone coming forward. And I'll take questions from the commission. All right, Mr. White, followed by Mr. Bartlett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Brian, there is no place on this. Is there for? There are no parapets as I'm seeing. Just they're all gables. No. So we don't really have a spot for solar on this. Can you speak to that, please?
Yeah, so actually we do have, Commissioner White, we do have a flat roof over this portion. But of course the problem is, probably the trees that are to the south of the project are going to block a lot of sun that we would get from there. But we do have a small flat roof area which this could work because it's less exposed. We are planting those 2 Canary Island palms approximately here and here, so they might do a little shading, but it would get south and southwesterly sun.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. White. Mr. Bartlett?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question for the applicant as well. Brian, on the first floor plan, since the setback up here is actually 3 feet at the ground floor for a garage, did you explore the idea of moving that garage closer to kind of minimize the impact of all these cars that radiate and create the odd geometries there? Or part of the answer might be that's where those big trees are, but I can't see that on this plan. That's why I wanted to ask.
I think it's still 6 feet, Commissioner
Well,
Bartlett.
that's not what we were sent by Dan Gullett.
Okay.
It says ground floor portion 6 feet, garage, carport, uncovered parking 3 feet. This was the follow-up email we had to our site visit.
If we switch back to mine, I'll show you that one ordinance again, because I think that actually had it. So, oops. So I don't. Here it indicates that even the interior would be 6 feet for 1 and 2 story buildings.
Well, maybe Dan can elaborate because he sent the follow-up email after our site visit stipulating the 3-foot setback at the first floor for garages.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Bartlett is correct. There is a 3-foot setback on the rear for R3 or R4 for garages.
Right. I just didn't know if you had explored that or if that would help you with that tight corner.
We were unaware of that. So, and it is. I think, Bruce, you've correctly identified this whole area is very tight, which is why complying with a 10-foot setback there would be difficult.
Yeah,
But-
I was trying to recall where those two big trees are on that side. Are they further towards Chapala, or are they adjacent to the garage?
No, they are right along, the one I believe is right here. Let me look at the landscape plan. Yeah, one of them, the Norfolk Island is right there. So it would probably be a problem just from that standpoint.
Got it. Okay. Thanks.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you. Any other questions from the commission? All right, comments, please? Anyone? Mr. White.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This project is signature Cornell in terms of architecture. It's a beautiful, beautiful design, and also it's crafted to consume every cubic foot of living space that for this size of units that I can manage to consider. I'm certainly, as we've talked about over the years, I'm really concerned about larger units, and I know that these are not large units. They're not small units either. And if I had my ideal fantasy, I would have something in this that would be either a rental or I know that Jonathan McGuire managed the hat trick up on Laguna Street of putting a couple of rental units into a condo project, and I wasn't involved in that project, and I don't know exactly how he managed it, but it did happen. And I'm looking for, as we've talked about Plan Santa Barbara, I'm just always looking for that opportunity for what's can we do to be dealing with the jobs housing imbalance with providing some affordable housing. And I appreciate that this project would pay the inclusionary fee, and that's a step in the right direction. So that's in overview. I've been working on the unit size. I'll continue to do so. This falls within the criteria that that the city is using. I don't quite agree with them, but it's his city policy, and so I can support that those unit sizes. The mods, I think, are reasonable. Clearly, the historic mod is it's not only tolerable, it's really bringing back a piece of Edwards and Plunkett architecture for the future, and that's wonderful. If I had the second mod, I feel like the mod into the front yard. I think of setbacks as being more landscaping or something like that. So that's if there's one mod that feels the least comfortable for me, it's that one for that reason. And I think of mods as being, setbacks as being for landscaping, not for this is for the handicap space. By the way, a question to staff: can that be grasscrete, or is that too bumpy for wheelchair access and so forth? Maybe, probably Mr. Cornell. Okay, Mr. Cornell shakes his head. Okay, I take your word for it. I made my comment about the solar. I don't want it to be an exercise in futility, but if it does provide any potential benefit, what I think ought to be a city policy is that where feasible, it's at least engineered and stubbed out, and then that so that somebody when we come back to retrofit solar, it's if it ends up being you have to tear everything apart to get the infrastructure in place, and you have to get it engineered, it's a headache. Whereas obviously at inception, those headaches are all being borne. So that would be one way that I could consider or would think that would be a useful part of this project. It's providing a reasonable amount of infrastructure, the undergrounding of utilities and so forth. It's clearly an upgrade of the neighborhood. Finally, the jobs housing imbalance, a big issue in Plan Santa Barbara. This is 11,000+ square foot commercial space. It has every potential to be, it has been an industrial space, it's been an office space, it's been lots of very intense employee type spaces. That's going away. So it is a net, I think, benefit from the standpoint of the city's jobs housing imbalance. So I'm anxious to hear what my colleagues have to say. As I say, the one area where I have concern is, two areas are unit size and that mod for the handicap space. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. White. And Mr. Bartlett?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I agree with Commissioner White. I think this is a great project, and I like the aspect that it really does pay homage to the history of this building. You know, by saving those historic facades, even though it creates the necessity for one of the modifications, I think it's fair justification for keeping some of these historical attributes that we all cherish about this town. I do agree that, you know, even though the project is, you know, somewhat pushing the limits in terms of the ground plane, I think it does so in certain areas in order to preserve the historical qualities and the large front yard setbacks of the old building. Had it all been leveled, I'm sure it could have had more openness elsewhere, but I think the historical aspects of this project are really what make it great. I don't have a trouble at all with the front yard modification on Yananali Street. I struggle a little bit with the one on Los Aguajes, mostly because I think of the interpretation. I've never seen this interpretation before in my life, that the access aisle for a handicap stall is counted as an encroachment into a setback, but it's somewhat splitting split hairs. If that's the way it's been determined, then I could certainly support the modification. I just know that it'll end up at City Council. So what I would suggest, though, to perhaps maybe diminish that feeling that it is an encroachment into the front setback, would be to maybe entertain doing that access aisle on the front entry of the driveway, perhaps with an enhanced paving band, so that it looked different and really, I think, increased the enhancement of that entrance, and therefore maybe it would look more like an asset in the front yard rather than just more concrete or asphalt paving. And I'm also not as concerned with the modification on the north. I wish the determination could have been made that that was an interior yard, so it would go away. And if there is the discretion still to do it, I would wish that could happen, because I know that just the word modification is going to lead far beyond this hearing. So, and I think in terms of the sustainability components of the project, even though they haven't been greatly discussed here, I know that the applicant is LEED accredited, and I would assume that he will be doing this by second nature, and I would encourage him to take it as far as he can, you know, within an economic reason. I know it's part of what we're all trying to do in town, and I applaud the applicant for his leadership in that direction. And I do think that this project does help with the jobs housing imbalance, and I would be willing to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bartlett. Mr. Thompson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, another, in my opinion, excellent project proposed by Mr. Kernal. I don't have any problems. I think it is an excellent use of a site that is in demand of an excellent use. The modifications, I think, are all supportable and logical. The issue about a rear yard versus an interior yard is kind of an interesting situation when you have 3 front yards, and the zoning ordinance seems to demand that we have a rear yard but doesn't demand that we have an interior yard. So I understand where staff's coming from, that we end up one of these sides, the only side available has to be a rear yard. But it is difficult when you have 3 front yards. How do you go with it? So, having said that, I see that the modification requested is definitely supportable. So I will support the project.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Lodge?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I concur with most of the comments that have been made. Particularly with Mr. White on the size of the units, I would prefer to see smaller units. However, in terms of the modifications, given that the property does have 3 front yards, one of them is for the historic building, and it is a minimal intrusion at the second floor level on what is the back rear, with the rear setback. I can support the project. I want to add that I'm delighted to see the tower coming back.
Thank you very much. And I'm very pleased with the retention and restoration of the historic facade and the clock tower. I think it's a terrific thing. I'm not having a problem with the mods, especially. I think Commissioner Bartlett had a great idea about. I don't know if you're able to do that kind of treatment for accessibility, but if you can, I think that's a nice idea. The other thing is, I've been paying attention particularly to solar products available. And there are all kinds of solar products available now that have not been available in the past. There's peel and stick. They've got stuff that goes with S-tile. They've got panels that actually have clay tile around the edges. So, that's just with a simple internet search by me, so I know what's available. I know about the trees, but I'm just saying that possibly there are other roof areas if other materials are explored. I don't know, but I'm saying we have to remember that this is an evolving technology constantly, and they're coming up with better products to address just design concerns such as ours. So I'd ask that you explore product as well, and I know you will. So with that, Mr. White.
I'm ready to make a motion when you're done.
Oh, thank you. I was just going to ask for that.
Well, Madam Chair, I would move that the Planning Commission approve the coastal development permit, tentative subdivision map, and 3 modifications for the project proposed for 203 Chapala Street, with the findings as outlined in the staff report, and ask instruct that the applicant explore with, this goes back to ABR, is that right?
HLC.
Goes back to HLC, feasible options for solar power on the project.
And the balconies, if you don't mind. He's made a few little tweaks on it.
Well, I'm sure HLC will tweak of their own volition.
All righty.
Second.
Thank you very much. I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Under discussion?
Oh, under discussion. Excuse me, Mr. Bartlett.
Would the maker of the motion be willing to include a comment about pursuing enhanced paving at the driveway entrance and handicap access?
I think that's a very good idea.
One moment, please, Mr. Cato. Sorry to interrupt.
Madam Chair, and the maker and the seconder of the motion, that might be appropriate to put in condition A3 and A4. Make it conditions for design review.
Okay.
To engineer and stub out the solar and explore options, right? And the second is to put in enhanced paving at that unloading zone.
Thank you, Mr. Cato.
That's
Mr. White?
fine with me.
All right. So we have a motion and a second. Okay, thank you, Mr. Thompson. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Great
you. You
idea,
have a
Commissioner
project.
Bartlett. I appreciate it.
This is appealable within 10 days to City Council. Now, I see the room is filling. If you are here to make public comment on the next item, there are some green slips at the back of the room. You'll need to fill out that green slip and get it up here to staff, please. And then you'll be allowed to speak to the item if you wish to speak. Thank you. And I need stamp, please. Oh, there it is. Thanks. There. Whoop. All right, we'll call the next item, please. This would be the application. This is an environmental hearing. Application of Steve Welt and Suzanne Elledge Planning and Permitting Services for the Montecito Country Club. Now, this is an environmental hearing, which means this is not a hearing at which we're going to approve the project. So we'll be receiving information, but we will not be making a decision today regarding the project. Is that, I'm correct, right?
Madam Chair, yeah, the purpose of the meeting is to comment on the initial study and the mitigated negative declaration. If you could hold comments on the actual project, that would be great.
Yes, thank you. So with that in mind, we'll proceed. Oh, and Commissioner Bartlett is stepping down.
Yes, I live directly adjacent to the Montecito Country Club, so I'll be stepping down on this item. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, and if we have a staff presentation then, please, with Ms. Allison DeBusk.
Thank you, Chair Larson and Commissioners. As you mentioned, this is an environmental hearing for the Montecito Country Club project located at 920 Summit Road. Here's a map of the project site. It's approximately 117 acres, and as you can see, it's bordered by Old Coast Highway to the south and Hot Springs Road to the east. Also, just so you're aware, the city-county border does run approximately along the boundaries of the Montecito Country Club. The project includes a redesign of the existing golf course, along with some clubhouse improvements, parking area improvements, demolition of several structures on site, including the cart barn, the maintenance building, the tennis pro shop, tennis courts, and flammable materials building, and construction of a new maintenance building, golf pro shop, tennis courts, and a cart barn. The project anticipates approximately 106,000 cubic yards of cut and 86,000 cubic yards of fill, and it is anticipated that that would be balanced on site. The applicant will go into a more detailed description of the project, so this is just a summary for you. So we did conduct our environmental review and determined that there are no significant unavoidable impacts, otherwise known as Class 1 impacts. There were some potentially significant but mitigable impacts identified, and those relate to biological resources, cultural resources, geophysical conditions, and water environment. Additionally, there are some less than significant or Class 3 impacts in the areas of aesthetics, air quality, hazards, noise, public services, recreation, and transportation circulation. To outline what are the next steps for this project, today we're holding the environmental hearing to take comments on the draft initial study and mitigated negative declaration. Public comments will continue to be accepted through June 22nd, 2009. And I do want to note that we have received many comment letters to date, and those have all been forwarded to your attention. Following the end of the public comment period, staff will draft a final mitigated negative declaration, and that will include responses to public comments received. And then the Planning Commission will hold a hearing to consider the final MND as well as project approval or project consideration. So just to reiterate, the public comment period ends June 22nd, and please send any comments to the City of Santa Barbara to my attention, or you can also email them to the address shown at the bottom of the screen. And that concludes staff's report, and I can answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we'll have our presentation from the applicant, please. Please introduce yourself.
Chair Larson and fellow commissioners, my name is Bill Medell. I'm the project manager for Ty Warner Hotels and Resorts, and we are pleased to be here before you today to receive comments as well as from the public on the draft mitigated negative declaration for the renovation of the Montecito Country Club. A great deal of time and effort was put into the renovation plans by our architects and consultants. with the primary direction to submit this project that not only complied with the CEQA criteria, but also provided many net benefits to the property and public. David Van Hoy, our project architect, will walk you through a short presentation of the project's plans and benefits. Also in attendance is Larry Hunt, our biologist, Jeremy Saltz, our civil engineer, Bill Brunsky, landscape architect with Gervin and Associates, Doug Fowler, our land use attorney, and Steve Welton with Suzanne Elledge, Planning and Permitting Services. After public comment, our staff, everybody's here to answer any questions that you may have once the presentation and public comment period is over.
Thank you very much. So with that, I will open the public comment. Oh, excuse me. Sorry. Oh, I thought he was. I thought, boy, that's shortest on record.
That's brief.
This is really getting good. We might make it.
Chair Larson and Commissioners, we've got a little technical thing going on over here, so if you can give us a couple minutes,
a technical
we'll get it sorted out. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Pardon?
May I ask a question while we have the technical thing on?
Please, Commissioner Thompson, do ask your question.
Thank you. Mr. Busk, you mentioned in your staff report that we're going to balance on site, but there's a 20,000 cubic yard difference between cut and fill. Can you describe how we're going to make 20,000 cubic yards disappear?
Commissioner Thompson, the engineer has determined that they expect that due to recompaction and shrinkage that actually will be balanced on site, and perhaps they can go into more detail on how that, what seems like a very large quantity, would actually be balanced on site.
Thank you. What's your status out there? So please introduce yourself.
Righty. I'll do a little tap dance here for a minute until we get booted up. But I'm David Van Hoy, architect, along with Blackbird Architects, who've been working on this project. And a little background while we're waiting for the show to load. The team, a very large and talented project team, has been working on this since about mid-2005. And we'll show you some illustrations of how the project has started out and has evolved, and then go through a quick environmentally focused presentation on the aspects of the project as soon as we can get the oh, here we go. I love technology. Okay, well, here's a photograph of the site, probably mid-20s. The building was originally constructed in 1917. You'll see the Eucalyptus Hill area in this area, and then 101 would be coming through. When 101, by the way, was constructed, it actually used part of the original golf course, and so the golf course had to be reduced in size when that was constructed, which will come up later in our presentation. This is an aerial photograph of the site. You just saw Allison had the similar exhibit up. As I said, we started working on this project in 2005. Originally, there was a proposal for some residential units over on a portion of the site. That was abandoned for several reasons that we'll get into in just a little bit. Another aspect of the project, the site is 118 acres, and a normal golf course usually is about 200 acres. Sandpiper Golf Course is a little bit over 200, Rancho's 200. All the projects I've ever done with Mr. Nicholas have been at least 200 acres for golf. So the effort here was to find as many areas on the property that we could use for golf to make the golf course a better activity and better recreation. So an early idea was to put all the parking, 400 parking stalls, below grade. However, it really resulted in a tremendous amount of grading, and that would have been an export situation where some of the dirt would have had to have left the site. So that was abandoned. And without that, that's the reason that the residential units couldn't happen. A third element of the older plan was, again, seemed like a good idea at the time, placing the maintenance facility down here with direct access off of Old Coast Highway. However, there was concern with the direct neighbors, and so we've relocated that facility to a location more centralized on the site, and we'll share that with you in just a little bit. So the group has been listening and meeting with neighbors and members and city staff really since the middle of 2005. And then there's a list of meetings here, again, with the Landmarks Commission and ABR, members, neighbors, and so forth over this past spring to prepare for today's presentation. This is the current plan, and again, this is where the maintenance facility will be located. And there was quite an extensive search for and participated by a number of renowned golf course architects, and Jack Nicklaus won that competition because of some very good ideas about how to get a better golf course on a very small piece of property, a very small sloping piece of property, shall we say. And so the golf course, his big idea really was several new holes. There's a hole here, which is number 1, that several of you saw on the site visit the other day. This uses a portion of the site that's currently not part of the golf course and has tremendous views right down the waterfront of Santa Barbara. The second new hole is number 3 here, which also utilizes a portion of the site that's not currently used for golf, a really wonderful little par 3 area here. The balance of the golf course holes are very similar. They play generally east to west and so forth and conform to topography. However, there are 2 safety considerations, hole number 7 and hole number 12. Currently, they play from west to east, and golfers have a propensity to slice the ball on a tee and goes off to the right. And so to avoid golf balls going off-site, now these 2 holes have been oriented the other direction, so those bad shots will then stay on site, which will help everybody. Jack really wants to take the course and some fine-tuning grading. I know with 118 acres you're looking at some of those grading numbers, which are more than I suspect that you're used to seeing. However, over 118 acres, it's a very minimal amount of grading, and it's really done for the play of golf, so it's not so much side to side as the holes will go up and down this way, so that it's more fair, if you will. However, without the underground parking, the entire project now balances on site to avoid truck trips in the neighborhood. Jack has also been able to add some length to the golf course. It's about 300 yards longer than it is currently. A normal golf course is usually just about 7,000 or just over 7,000 yards, and so that's a goal. But on this property, it's still a very, very good, very high-level golf course. And so, again, that's all done, everything we've described, in reducing 5 acres of existing turf on site, which will, of course, save a lot of water. These are illustrations of some signature bunkers that Jack is proposing. These are from another one of his golf courses, and so there's a kind of a signature that each golf course architect uses. And so this white sand and the outline of the bunkers, and this gives you an idea of the aesthetics of a Jack Nicklaus signature golf course. Drainage is an issue. There's about a 250-acre watershed that crosses the golf course. Really, most of the Eucalyptus Hill neighborhood drains across the golf course currently. And as we zoom in on that situation, we can see some illustrations of what happens along the northern edge right now, where many of the neighbors' properties drain directly onto the golf course without really much treatment or sophistication, shall we say. That drainage is then directed almost immediately to a piped system that runs below the golf course and distributes all that water straight to Old Coast Highway, which has some historical flooding problems. The strategy now would be to, as part of this project, is to bring and restore that drainage up to the surface again and remove the piped drainage and remove it and actually move it back up to the surface where it can become a visual amenity for the golf course. It can become a filtering system for the water and improve water quality. This is the landscape architect's illustration of currently the pipe picks up the water right here, so all of this is below grade, and now this water will run in storms and then be collected at the bottom in a detention basin, again for treatment purposes and to be able to regulate the flow of water off-site. This is again another one of Mr. Nicklaus's golf courses, and so that sort of above grade riparian habitat drainage would be look something like this potentially. This is again another illustration of what this detention pond could look like. It's multifaceted in terms of water quality. It also plays into the strategy of the particular golf holes that these ponds are. There are actually 2 ponds on site or adjacent to. This is a section through that pond, and it's the soil in that area is very salt intensive, and so the pond will be lined to prevent salt intrusion into that water. And some of that water will actually be pumped part way up here so that that creek can run and filter even in a greater degree. There is a companion water course on the eastern edge of the property. This is a drawing of that water course, and a lot of the same principles are applied here, bringing currently piped drainage above grade and terminating in a slightly smaller detention pond. The habitat restoration opportunities along the edges here for riparian habitat are really an opportunity for, again, aesthetics and environmental enhancement. Here's another example of what that might look like. In addition, there are 2 sediment basins proposed. And again, if you remember the drainage, most of the drainage comes onto the property along the north and passes across the property. So the idea is to pick up a lot of the mud and debris that is currently washed across the site and then leaves on the south to be able to collect that matter up close. It's a long-term maintenance issue that the ownership is willing to take on to keep the course clean and the areas below the course cleaner. The drainage strategy for the whole site is to direct drainage to these water courses, again, so that the water can travel through here, become biofiltered and clean, retained on site, and be able to leave the site in an orderly fashion and limit the flooding that happens currently on Old Coast Highway. We are currently, according to the civil engineer here, we're going from a condition where we have 0% of stormwater runoff being routed and treated from a quality standpoint to 100% of the runoff being treated on the site. So that's a substantial increase, obviously. So our benefits are really balancing grading on site, the 100% treatment of stormwater, reducing the needs for turf irrigation, improving the flooding impacts on Coast Highway, restoring the natural surface drainage, and both of the drainage courses, that those projects exceed the criteria as habitat restoration from the governing bodies, and so they're true restoration projects. In terms of irrigation, the course has a very antiquated irrigation system, so that if one place on the site needs water, the zone that's in also gets watered, and so again that wastes a lot of water, which we don't want to do. And so the new system that'll be computer controlled, you won't see the sprinklers on when it's raining and so forth, can direct water only where it's programmed and not waste water on areas that don't need it, thus saving tremendous amounts of water. The existing trees on site, this is an illustration of the trees that currently exist on site. There was an exhaustive study, literally tree by tree, on the entire property to evaluate the condition of the tree, the species of the tree, and so forth. And we found several, quite frankly, very scary-looking trees, some dead trees. If we get the center photograph here, you'll see a condition that happens quite often on the golf course, where trees that aren't meant to have their sort of feet in the water, so to speak, are right up against the turf. And this turf is constantly being watered, which gives too much water for the tree and makes it very unhealthy, and they've become very damaged as a result of that. This is an illustration in red here of the proposed new trees that will be planted on site as part of the project. And then the next slide will show the two put together. So this is existing and proposed. All of the new trees will be site-appropriate trees, trees that really belong in Santa Barbara, belong in our climate, and so forth. And I'd like to point out an example here in the middle. This is another golf course, Rancho San Marcos, that the same owner has rehabilitated 2 summers ago. And the oak tree in the foreground here was actually impeding the play of golf and was actually relocated on site. And this is that tree. Very successful relocation project. In addition to the golf course at Rancho San Marcos received an award, I think, a couple of years ago for the oak tree propagation program that they have there. They actually start and raise hundreds and hundreds of oak trees that are, it's not a secret that people can go over there and get the starts of new oak trees basically as part of their program. And that's a great program. And again, moving oak trees can be very successful if it's done carefully. Again, here's an example of the, rather than turf coming up to the trees, using a bark ground cover in this location so that the play of golf is clearly here and the trees can be happy and not be overwatered. So the summary of the tree situation on site is about 65% of the trees will be preserved, 28 removed, and 7% relocated on site. Of the trees that are to be removed, they're either dead, diseased, or non-native. So the vast majority of trees that are being removed have problems in one way or another. At the end of the day, when the project is completed, there'll be actually 60 additional trees on the property compared to today's condition. So our landscape and irrigation benefits, again, we're reducing water usage by 20%. We're using state-of-the-art irrigation to accomplish that. Implementing best management practices commensurate with the way the city runs their 2 golf course properties in town. Add native plants and mature city-approved trees, and increase the number of trees on site by a quantity of 60.
About 2 minutes left.
Okay, we're almost there. The last element is the clubhouse. This is a picture of when it was new, when this car was new, actually. And there are some subtle elevations to the clubhouse here. This is an important historic building by the architect Bertram Goodhue. We are looking at improving the interior of the club primarily for members' benefit. This is the existing condition, and you'll see some slight changes to the windows on the ground floor here. They become more of a rectilinear shape. That allows more light and air to get into the lower levels and better views, which are stellar from this site. On the west end of the building, we're adding an outdoor patio adjacent to the proposed women's locker room. So you'll see the changes on the edge of the building here compared to the existing condition. All of these have been reviewed and received very positive comments from the Historic Landmarks Commission. The existing cart barn building will be removed and the golf carts will be placed below grade in the future, below one of the new tennis courts or the relocated tennis courts, and the pro shop is being removed or moved outside the building, which will free up some more space inside the historic building. You'll see a side elevation and the elevation that faces the ocean here in comparison to the existing historic building. And there's the maintenance building that we discussed earlier, and the design of that is basically as stealth a building as we could design. It's very residentially modulated. It's taking its color keys from the surrounding landscape, 1 story in height, with the exception of 1 service bay that's required to be taller.
Need you to wrap up now.
Okay, 2 more view simulations. We just wanted to say that we're protecting the views of the neighbors uphill. This is the existing photograph, and in the circle you'll see the appearance of the effect that the maintenance facility has. And then one from down below, from Cabrillo Boulevard, again, the existing condition, and you'll see the new pro shop in terms of view potential impacts, which we don't feel that there are. Let's just go through this really quick, Aaron. We're basically realigning the entry drive so that it's not straight any longer to slow cars down. Bear with me for just a moment. And providing views. Just keep clicking. And again, there's less square footage, no view impacts.
Thanks.
And then we have a list at the end that just summarizes that, and thank you for your time.
Thanks.
We have the whole crew here with questions, or if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, we're going to have public comment now, and if everything goes sprightly and everyone sticks to 2 minutes, or if you agree with someone, you may just say, I agree, come up, you say it, and sit down. We respect that very much. If we move in a very quick manner, we have about 45 minutes of public comment. So we have to leave the building by 5 o'clock. So with that in mind, I'll ask for 2 minutes from Hillary Hauser, followed by Kaylin Kelly.
Chair Larson, members of the Commission, I'm Hillary Hauser from Heal the Ocean. We've been through this initial study of viral checklist word for word, and I'd like to just speak to this business of the stormwater control. What you basically have here is a golf course that is really a stormwater facility. I mean, it's fantastic. I mean, we look at projects like this and look for things like this. The the combination of this system of natural filters, the sediment basin, the sedimentation basin, the bonds, the vegetated swales to capture this runoff is and to daylight the pipe water underground to treat it the way that nature would treat it is really fantastic. You have a memo from Penfield and Smith that does say that right now the stormwater runoff is not treated at all, and with this plan it'll be treated 100%. Earlier this month, the City Council approved a plan for the municipal golf course to install something like this at a cost of $2.5 million. And the Ty Warner people are doing this at their own expense. And if any project deserved a mitigated a negative declaration, this is it. And I don't say that very often. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Kelly Kennedy, followed by Michael Ditmore.
Thank you. I'm Kalon Kelly, and my wife and I live right adjacent to the property, more or less overlooking the second tee at 149 Remetto Road. And I have just two comments about the negative declaration. First of all, the presentation here said that all of the trees are site-specific trees, are site-appropriate trees. And probably that's in general true, but there's, I think, a significant omission, particularly with respect to those of us who live up in the general area where I do. There are some very large blue gum eucalyptus trees that are 150 plus feet tall that protrude very substantially in the neighborhood views of people looking down slope at that. And this seems like it's a good opportunity, since the club is reworking that area, taking out some trees, for it to deal with that issue, thin some trees, remove a couple of them that aren't necessary, and I've made some specific recommendations in what's been handed out here to you. The other comment I'd make has to do with the access, current informal access, or however it's best described, off of Remetto and Summit Roads through the country club. That access, as I understand it from the ND, is proposed to be closed by a wall. We've had some good meetings with the country club people, the Ty Warner people, and in those meetings they acknowledged, seemingly from my perspective, that there was a safety issue and that they would provide for something like a breakaway gate there and design a hardened subsurface element underneath the ground so that emergency vehicles and neighbors, in the event of a fire emergency or something like that, could get through the property. Unfortunately, this isn't discussed here. It's discussed only to the extent that the ND says we don't need that for fire protection of the country club. The fact that it's needed for the fire protection of the people living on Summit, Remetto Road, and Alston Road isn't discussed, and that really needs to be discussed. You can't make the finding that they're proposing here that there's no significant issue. I'm closing that.
Thank you. Emmy Dunn. Oh, I'm sorry. Michael Ditmore, followed by Emmy Dunn.
Got me there for a second, Madam Chairman and members of the Commission. My name is Michael Ditmore. I'm a member of the board of the Eucalyptus Hill Homeowners Association. I'm also president of the Santa Barbara Amateur Radio Club, which provides a lot of the emergency radio operators for the Emergency Operations Center. We've worked the last 4 fires in the last 2 years very significantly. I also participated in the evacuation drills of the Mission Canyon area and the Riviera and Montecito. And I'm here to speak not to the overall plan so much, which we very much support. I think it's an absolutely gorgeous plan. But my point is the same as the last one that the previous speaker made. For the last 28 years, I've lived on Remetto Road at 211, and that gate has been available during emergencies for evacuation purposes should it be needed. I think to see that go away will be a significant diminution of our evacuation capability and place all of the load of the Remetto Road and Summit Road back onto Alston, which is our only backup choice. So that's my objection. Strictly a safety one. we love the plan other than that.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much. Emmy Dunn, followed by Woody Barrett.
Hello, I'm Emmy Dunn, and I have written comments, and I support the project.
Thank you. Woody Barrett, followed by Tom Orlando.
Hello, I'm Woody Barrett. I'm a member of the Montecito Country Club, and I think just from the viewpoint, there's been an intense amount of work done on this. It all seems to be environmentally focused, which is what Santa Barbara is about. We moved here 8 years ago. Of course, I'm from Texas. You can get a little bit of the accent. But in any case, the amount of water that's going to be saved with this system is immense. We play golf out there 3 or 4 times a week if we can. It's usually once a week, though. There are areas in the fairways that you step and it's mushy. It's totally, overwatered. There are other areas that are dry. And there's very little drainage on the course when it rains, except onto Old Coast Road. So just from the water standpoint, because I'm sure everybody has to pay the water bill for their yards, this is going to save a ton of water, because right now the systems in place is not very efficient at all. As far as all the other things that they've done, I approve of all of them, and I support the project.
Thank you very much. Tom Orlando, followed by, that was Tom Orlando, followed by Nigel Copley.
Thank you, Chairperson Larson and fellow commissioners. My name is Tom Orlando. I've lived in the area for about 10 years. I'm also the current men's club committee chair, and I believe the plan as submitted for the course renovation clearly improves the environmental aspects of the club. It reduces water consumption by 20% by introducing a new state-of-the-art irrigation system. It redirects and treats the stormwater runoff and reduces the flooding impacts on Old Coast Highway. If you've ever played the course after a rainstorm, you'll understand what a significant impact this new design will have. It also adds native plants and mature trees by adding more than 60 trees, and it implements the best management practices for the course. I thank you for your time, and I hope you'll approve the design plan.
Thank you very much. Just a reminder that we're not here to approve the project today, but just receiving your environmental comments, which are very important. So Nigel Copley, followed by Hiro Suzuki.
Madam Chair, fellow commissioners, thank you for the time today. My name's Nigel Copley. I'm a member at the club and also at Coral Casino, also owned by Mr. Warner. Having gone through the Coral Casino, it's nice to have a different viewpoint of this process. I think he's certainly initiated the input of the members, the neighbors. I totally support the project. I think some of the figures in water consumption are very conservative. Their irrigation system is probably as old as the club itself. It's certainly bandaged. Every second or third week we have water issues with broken irrigation systems. I think one thing also important is with the new system that would be implemented, we also will reduce pesticide use, which is significant for the membership. I know it's a big issue in Montecito and in Santa Barbara in general. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Hiro Suzuki, followed by Debbie Daly. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair and dear commissioners. Thank you for listening to me. I would like to express my strong support to the project of Montecito Country Club's golf course renovations. At the very entrance of the city, and such a beautiful green slope of golf course, which will be renovated by Jack Nicklaus, will be a great asset to the city and communities, and to entertain visitors from south too. And the course will be very environmentally friendly and a well conservative usage of water and the controlled stormwater running off the site, which has been a huge headache to the club and the neighborhood properties as well. I definitely believe Mr. Ty Warner will never break a dream, and I know that he would never break a heart. And I thank for these commissioners to proceed this project. properly. Thank you so much.
Thank you very
By
much.
the way, I just live adjacent to the property, and I love it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Debbie Daly, followed by David Alpert.
Chair Larson
Alpert.
and fellow commissioners, my name is Debbie Daly. I've been a member of the club for 20 years, and I'm the current chair of the Women's Golf Committee. And I agree with Mr. Orlando and Mr. Copley about the state-of-the-art irrigation system. And the Ladies Golf Committee gives 100% support to this project. It's eco-friendly, and the water treatment will benefit the whole community. Thank you.
Thank you so much. David Alpert, followed by Peter Alpert. Oh, they left. All right. Thank you very much. They're in support. Gloria Vaughn, followed by Eric Levette.
Good afternoon. My name is Gloria Vaughn. I've been a member of the Montecito Country Club 10 years. I live on the 3rd fairway at 546 Scenic Drive. I'm in a position to see the kind of drainage issues right out my back door, to the degree that the flooding down on Old Coast Highway has oftentimes prevented homeowners driving out down Harbor View onto Old Coast Highway. There were times we had been turned back. So I am definitely in support of this project. I think the drainage system they have outlined is superb. Thank you.
Thank you most kindly. Eric Levette? Not here. Okay. Luz Simeone, followed by Don Lucian.
Madam Chair and fellow commissioners, I'm a native Santa Barbaran, and I want to reiterate a few points because I cannot expound enough on the benefits of this newly designed golf course. They hit the nail on the head with a lot of the projects that they're doing, especially the new state-of-the-art sprinkler system and irrigation system, which environmentally speaking will eliminate a lot of the water usage that is not needed. And lastly, I would like to say the Montecito building itself and its tower and the newly designed golf course will and still adds aesthetic beauty to the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Don Lucian, followed by Marie-Louise Peterson.
Mr. White, looking at me, we used to hit tennis balls at each other over the years. I have been a resident of Santa Barbara since 1955. My father was a very successful developer, so I'm very familiar with these proceedings, having sat through many of them. This project is so worthy of final approval. The aesthetics alone. I'm unfortunately one of the newest members, so I had to pay 6 figures to become a member, and I would not have spent that much money unless I believed that Ty Warner would carry through with my expectations of an aesthetically and environmentally improved course. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Marie-Louise Peterson, followed by Judy Hatfield.
I'm Marie-Louise Peterson. Thank you very much. I live on the golf course a few doors down from Gloria Vaughn on Scenic Drive, and I can't speak very well because I have laryngitis today, but I highly approve of everything that's been said good about this project. Thank you.
I thank you very much. Judy Hatfield, followed by John Pate.
Fellow Commissioners, my husband and I have been members of the golf.
Could you introduce yourself, please?
I'm Judy Hatfield.
Thank you.
My husband and I have been members at Montecito since 1997, and for the past 4 years we've followed very closely the Ty Warner Group and their efforts to improve this. I am very much in favor of the project. My husband and I spend a lot of time at the golf club, and one thing I would like to point out, it's almost the gateway to the city. So many times people come in and they say, "What is that gorgeous building? Is that your club? Is that the club you belong to?" And we say yes, and we will be so proud of the new course, and we really hope you will approve this process. Thank you.
Thank you very much. John Pate. followed by Tom Schleck. Okay, well, there's two Johns. Oh, there's Tom. Tom Schleck? Are you here? No? Okay, Tom Snow. All right, Sam Maphis. Our final speaker.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners. I just want to speak to the environmental side. I'm a local landscape architect, and I think any time that you can take an environmental problem, such as some of the drainage issues, as you know on Coast Village Road, and you can turn it into an asset, such as the water features. You can take streams that go into pipes, and you can expose the beauty of that natural runoff into a bioswale. I think that project should be applauded and certainly should be moved forward environmentally. I also think that the safety issues of some of the redesign of the holes being moved away from circulation on Old Coast Village Road is something that's very commendable. So I think environmentally, as a landscape architect, if you can add more trees and expose more nature and let the process do what is being proposed, you're really a win-win for the community and certainly for our local community and natural environment.
Thank you very much. So any other public comment? All right, I'll close public comment. I do want to say we did receive a huge amount of email as well, and so that'll be documented in, these comments will be entered and documented. And so now to the Commission for questions and comments, or however we can step through it. Ms. Lodge.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The letters that we have, there were 17 about the gate, the permanent closure of the gate and safety issues related to that, and then 2 speakers spoke to that as well. It was mentioned that the environmental review looked at safety in terms of the golf course itself. What about the safety of those who rely on that as an alternative escape route in the case of wildfire?
Commissioner Lodge, we did receive a memo from the fire department. Unfortunately, a representative is not able to be here today, but that memo did discuss a little bit about the safety to the neighborhood, and that was something that was taken into consideration when they determined that putting in a solid fence across where that existing gate is would be acceptable for both the safety of the neighborhood and the safety of the club. So that was something that was considered in their review.
Thank you, Ms. DeBosk. I did see that memo. However, having had to evacuate both for the T and the Jesucita fire, and seeing what happened, particularly with the T fire, where one of my possible escape routes, my houses were burning on it. I wasn't going to go that way, right? And I still have concerns for the neighbors there, and because I think, both of the streets go in the same direction. They go north, which is the direction that a wildfire is most likely to be coming from. So I would appreciate a little more review of that issue. Then Russell Ruiz, who is on the Water Commission, or was on the Water Commission, raised some questions about water use. I just heard that it's going to be reduced by 20%, I believe. Is reclaimed water used for the golf course itself?
Commissioner Larson, or Chair Larson and Commissioner Lodge, yes, reclaimed water is used quite extensively on the golf course. In fact, I believe it's one of the largest users within the city. And that will continue with this new project, that it will be used wherever possible.
Okay, I hope the Montecito Country Club will look at ways possibly to make even greater use of the reclaimed water. Mr. Ruiz referred to some irrigation systems and relating to other golf courses where there's even less water used and more use made of reclaimed water. So I hope the proponents will look at that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioner White?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Could perhaps the applicant could speak to the issue of the emergency access? That is obviously the if there's a hot button. Could you talk to us a little bit about that? Is this something that is flexible still, or where are we on that?
Chair Larson, Commissioner White, that's something that we will continue to work with the fire department. We have ideas that we think we can do. We have to discuss that with fire department. Our goal is to work with the neighbors on that issue. But we also don't want to restrict the fire department's needs and their operations and things like that. And then secondly, we do need to talk to the owner. How do we minimize any type of liability and some things like that? But that is something that we will continue to look into after this meeting and before the next.
Thank you. Clearly that's the Ms. Lodge. I wasn't in quite as tight of a situation as either Ms. Lodge or Mr. Thompson when it comes to fire hazard, although we were in the evacuation areas or warning areas for both fires as well. And we actually are, my own family is could use this Summit Road as one of our ways out. And I've, having spent my life going to the Montecito Country Club, I remember the day when I would go from Mountain Drive to Montecito Country Club we had access through El Rancho Road and Summit Road, and there was a straight access practically north to south in that era. So it historically, at least when in my younger days, that was a standard route, and my gut feeling is that that's a real resource for the neighborhood, and that I don't think that the fire department is going to be able to convince the very committed and savvy group of neighbors there that that this is an unimportant access route. So please make your best effort there, because I think that's the critical issue, that all the rest of which is kind of small pieces. The small pieces for me, so clearly there's a lot of grading, which is if this were just a 5 or 10 acre site, one would be concerned, but on 150 acres it really is relatively small, and anybody who's walked that course knows one leg needs to be shorter than the other in order to make it work. The things that came to my mind are and there's sort of a little bit of indulgence in concept review, but one potential adverse impact is the views from the old Coast Highway to the mountains. I see the berms are pretty substantial in size, and I would like that looked at so that we now get some nice views as we drive by there, or now walk by. Now that the new sidewalk is going in, there's actually a place where you can, you're not just worried about getting killed. You can actually walk along there, although of course it's very noisy. But that's one potential impact question that I'd like looked at. The comments about all the water. Oh, another one is that on the swale at the bottom on the west side, the large water feature there, it looked like it was lined, and I would be looking for more comments about why that would. Maybe it's lined, but at least maybe it's got holes in the bottom that would allow as much percolation as possible to go through, so that there would be even a minor bit of recharge involved, and so forth and so on. And so that seemed odd to me that would simply be an impermeable surface under there. Maybe there's more environmental benefit to a compromise solution there for that. I would like the document to reflect the possibility. I mentioned this to Mr. Mandel on the site visit of a couple of small SRO, single resident occupancies perhaps, or something like that, studios in the maintenance area. I think this would be good eyes on the street, and watch watch persons, as well as, of course, lowering transportation demands. I'd be looking at what kind of shuttle services that the club could offer to staff for picking people up from the nearest bus station. I think that's an opportunity to be smart with our transportation on this thing. I'd like to hear about the composting program. I know the city is getting going on that with restaurant leftovers, and just have that be something that perhaps this project could be a model on. As in the past project that we were talking about, the solar opportunities that would exist on this project. There's a lot of parapet-type surfaces on this project, and there may be some opportunities to really make a dent in the energy needs without any adverse environmental or visual impacts. So another comment on the document is that the historical section was just a fascinating read. The one gap in there was that it didn't talk about the amazing tennis history of that property, which is just a gonzo history of Montecito aristocracy, which was missed there. And my last comment would be that I promise you that this will not take as long as the Coral Casino to be processed.
Thank you very much, Mr. White. Mr. Thompson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be brief. First, I'd just like to make a general comment about the project, even though this is an environmental hearing. To me, it appears that the team that's putting this together is top quality all the way, and the project is an exemplary project for the area. Having said that, the draft mitigated negative declaration is a very thorough document. I will only say there are 3 areas that I think require some enhancement and more detailed coverage. Water usage, I understand, and it says in there 144 acre-feet per year of recycled water, but I think the use of recycled water needs to be covered in more depth and emphasize that this is really a critical thing environmentally. Golf courses are probably some of the most intensive water uses that we can ever have, and water is a critical thing here on the South Coast, so I think that needs to be very thoroughly covered. The use of chemical fertilizers and pesticides, I looked for it in there, couldn't find much discussion about it. It needs to be covered in there, and we need to have mitigations to make sure that there are in place procedures to not employ polluting chemicals, follow perhaps the city's process on that. We've instituted quite a plan in the city to try to get away from using some of the more hazardous chemicals. That ought to be in this plan as a mitigation. And finally, the emergency access gate issue needs to be covered in this MND from the standpoint of the neighborhood, not only from the standpoint of the country club. And I understand the fire department's position. I won't debate my friend Jim Austin right now about that, but I also would point out that the fire department was also agreeable to shelter in place in the Botanic Gardens, and we see what happened to the Botanic Garden building in this latest fire. So, you know, we need to look at that a lot more thoroughly in this document than is currently in there. That should be in the transportation circulation on starting about page 35, and I don't see very much about it at all. Those are my 3 issues that I think need to be enhanced. Otherwise, the document is very well done and suits the purposes to move forward. Thanks.
Anyone else? I have 2 words written down: fire and pesticides. So my comments are no different from anybody else's here on the fire. I didn't have to evacuate, but I had evacuees in my home. And this is a very serious thing, and we have all seen it, and we are witness to it. We've had a fire every quarter. We can't afford to take a gamble. We have certainty here for fire. we must be prepared for fire. Pesticide use, golf courses have been notorious in the past for pounds of pesticides applied per square foot practically. So I'm very concerned for pesticide use in a residential milieu or anywhere where we have water passing to the sea, where we have water being detained, anywhere we're using pesticides. They're as much as possible to be looked at and considered in terms of the environment. I do want to compliment everyone who came here for public comment. I think you set a record for being concise, to the point, and somehow I feel there are those of you sitting out there who are very practiced at this. So thank you for your input today. We appreciate it very much. And comment may be further submitted for a period of what, how many days?
June 22.
Chair Larson, until June 22nd.
Until June 22nd. So if you have any other thoughts or your neighbor wants to comment, encourage them to please come and do so. Thank you very, very much. And with that, we'll move on to our next item.
Madam Chair,
Oh, I will.
could we take a brief break?
Yes, that would be fine. We'll take a very brief recess. I'm anticipating that the Planning Commission won't leave the building. Thank you.